All right, thanks, Ron. I'll go ahead and dive right in. I want to welcome everybody to the third Space Education Symposium, or Space Education Summit, as we're calling it now. Really fantastic to have everybody here, as we saw in the chat, with such a great global representation. In terms of people who are registered, we have over 400 people registered, about half of them from outside the US, representing over 60 countries. So it's fantastic to have everybody here from all over Spaceship Earth, to connect, to learn about how people experience their viewing the Earth from space. We're going to start by talking to a number of folks who have been to space, how we might prepare the next generation for this growing space economy and for humanity's rapidly approaching multi-planet future. So that's why we're all here. I'm going to dive right in. And to kick things off, I mentioned the way that people perceive the Earth from space. For anybody that needs just a little bit of background knowledge, I want to share the concept of the overview effect. And this is the shift in consciousness that people tend to experience when they see the Earth from space for the first time. And they look down and they see no borders and they see no tribes, and they see what a vulnerable and precious island of life we're living on, hurtling through the void in the cosmos. So really looking forward to hearing from our panelists this morning about how they experienced that. And I want to give credit to Frank White, who is here with us and coined the term back in 1987 with the first edition of the book, The Overview Effect. It's in its fourth edition now, if you're interested in picking that up. Frank's later work, for what it's worth, or work that followed on immediately from the Overview Effect, really looked at how humanity might adjust to migration to the solar system and beyond. He considered it a 1,000-year project, a central project of humanity, and coined the term the Human Space Program. So this event is hosted by the Human Space Program, which is now a nonprofit that you can get involved with. So if you head over to humanspaceprogram.org, you can check out the various projects and get involved there. So thank you to Frank and to everyone at the Human Space Program for supporting this event. We have a number of other partners that I want to acknowledge just very briefly. We'll drop some links into the chat for them. I'll catch up on that if it doesn't happen while I'm speaking. But many of our organizers are represented by these organizations as well. So love to send you guys over to Earthscape VR, which attempts to bring that experience to people here on Earth, and to make use of it for leaders of organizations, for instance. Aries Learning, which is dedicated to space education. Celestial Citizen, if you guys don't know the program, it's well worth checking out their podcast and their newsletter. Ignited Thinkers, another space education effort. One of our organizers, Gitika Gorthy, does a great interview series there. And of course, the Human Space Program. So I am co-hosting this with the other organizers. Dr. Anahita Nizami is a practicing psychologist from the UK. She's responsible for Earthscape VR with her partners. And we're really excited to have her here. She also co-hosted a children's book about the Overview Effect with Frank, which we will share later as well. Ron Rossano, who is our Zoom host today. Ron is a future astronaut with both Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin. He's been dedicated to speaking with teachers and students in schools for over a decade now. I think last time you told me, Ron, and this was a while ago, was over 12,000 students have been through the program. So thanks for all the space chats. This is like a big giant space chat. Gitika Gorthy is a freshman at Columbia University, and she is also the host and founder of Ignited Thinkers, which, as I mentioned, is dedicated to space education. We're super stoked to have Gitika involved and has brought us the strand for young professionals today. So acknowledgement and thanks to my co-hosts who've been meeting with me on the regular, preparing for this, getting all the speakers together and the sessions together. And we've got a great day planned for you today. Now that brings us to the participants, all of you. Just a couple of norms before we jump into the panel. Definitely do participate in the text chat. So fantastic to see everybody sharing there, sharing where you're from, We've got folks from all over the globe and sharing your answers to questions and dropping your questions in there as well. We'll be on it as much as we can, either offering our own answers or our own links, or perhaps bringing them up to the panelists or the presenters while we go through the session. Do go ahead and use the raise hand feature down at the bottom of the screen. If you have a question, we'll try to accommodate as many as we can. We have a few questions for the panelists, and when we get to the end, we'll jump into others. And be sure to unmute or share screen if we ask you to speak up. And if you need it, use the help feature. That will basically send Ron a message. So you could also do that just right in the chat, or you can put your question or your need for help in the chat, and one of the co-hosts will attempt to help you. By the way, if you are a presenter or a moderator and you've not yet been made a co-host, go ahead and send Ron a message or just speak up in the chat, and we will make sure that we get to make you all a co-host. All right. I am going to introduce one more thing before we kick off, and that is after the panel, we will head on over to spaceeducation.events/schedule. We'll also be putting a link into the chat here to make it convenient. And that's where you'll find all of the other sessions. You'll be able to see which is in the 4 rooms and pick the session of your choice. We'll go in a little bit more detail about that after the panel, but just wanted to make you guys aware of that. We're in the general session right now. We're all here together to hear the astronauts speak, and then we'll break out into the breakout sessions. At the end of the day, we'll come back here together for a fireside chat with Frank and with Rick Tumlinson. So I want to pause just for a second. If anybody does have a question around any of these logistics, go ahead and drop that in the chat. We will attempt to get to that. That said, I want to introduce our astronaut panel. We're really excited to have each of these people here with us. They represent flights on a wide variety of vehicles and a wide variety of expertise. And they come also, like our participants, from all over the world. So Sirisha Bandla is an Indian-American aeronautical engineer and Vice President of Government Affairs and Research Operations for Virgin Galactic. She flew on the Virgin Galactic Unity 22 mission with Richard Branson, becoming the second India-born woman to go to space. So super excited to have her here representing that experience, on the ship, but also on the ground with Virgin Galactic. Ron Guerin then is a decorated space shuttle astronaut, fighter pilot, and social entrepreneur. He spent 178 days in space, traveling more than 71 million miles and 2,800 orbits. He flew on both the US space shuttle and the Soyuz spacecraft, the Russian Soyuz. So really excited to hear his perspective on those experiences as well. And he champions an orbital perspective in his humanitarian work here on Earth. Finally, we also have Sara Sabry, who's the first person born in Egypt and from Africa to fly in space. She earned her bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering with minors in biology, chemistry, and pre-med. She's bringing a lot of science to the table. She also has a master's in biomedical engineering and is fluent in Arabic, French, and English, a global citizen. She grew up in Cairo, and she is the founder of the nonprofit Deep Space Initiative. So Sara, of course, flew with Blue Origin. So we're excited to have, if I'm doing my math right, 4 different human-rated launch vehicles represented here. Going to hear a lot of great perspectives from our panelists. So I am actually going to stop sharing the slides for a moment. We're going to have this on speaker view for the recording so that we can see and hear our panelists very well. And I'm going to go ahead and ask the first question to the panel. And that is, and if perhaps we can just go in order, at least for the first question. So maybe we'll start with Sirisha and then Ron and Sara. But what was your experience of the overview effect? Sirisha, if you don't mind kicking off for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everyone. Good to see everybody. And excuse me for my voice. I just got back from a space symposium, and I know someone is in Colorado Springs, so maybe perhaps we were in the same room at some point this week at the space symposium. But yeah, so for the overview, I mean, it's really, I've said this multiple times, it's really, really difficult for me to put into words because it really is a feeling and an experience. I'm really excited for sending more and more people to space that are better at communicating in many different ways what that experience is like. But for me, it wasn't really a point in time when I saw the Earth. It was an experience and a feeling that lasted, I would say, months and months after the flight, as I reflected back on not only the journey to space, but getting to space and looking down on Earth. So it was really something that slowly came to me as for sure days after the flight, but honestly months after the flight. And it really is that shift in awareness. I think I truly believed that the planet was, already worth protecting. It is, fragile, but seeing it from space definitely put it into perspective. I think the biggest feeling that I cannot shake is how small I felt in space, but I did not feel insignificant, which was huge for me.
If I could follow that up just real briefly, what changed over the period that you reflected on it?
What changed over the period I reflected on? Man, so it was, I still struggle to try to put these into words, but it was honestly the recognition of the passage of time. Something about seeing Earth from space, reflecting on that was the planet that all of my experiences, my memories, everything I've known, seeing that from space, looking at it and reflecting back on it was honestly something about recognizing how I've spent my time and how I'm noticing how I'm spending my time. I know this sounds really weird, but that was one of the biggest cognitive shifts I felt in the months after going to space.
That's a very interesting answer. I don't have the experience Ron has interviewing a number of astronauts, but I have not heard somebody talk about the change in their sense of time. Well, let's move over to Ron perhaps next and hear from him his experience. And Ron, of course, had a totally different scale of time while he was up there for a total of 2,800 odd orbits. But Ron, how did you experience that from space?
Yeah, that's a. I agree 100% with Sirisha in that it's something that evolves over time. It's, to me, I look at it like the experience of seeing the planet from space just plants a seed, and if that seed is cultivated, it's going to grow into something amazing. And I've written 3 books trying to share that experience, but it's something that you can't fully share. And so, even though I haven't fully shared it, we're talking, 600 pages between the 3 books probably. So I'll try and condense 600 pages into as short as I can. But to me, it was an epiphany in slow motion, is how I describe it. And there were some things that happened right away. The first thing that really hit me as I saw the planet for the first time from the vantage point of space was the thinness of the atmosphere. And there's no photographs you can look at. There's nothing, I don't think, to prepare you for seeing, basically what's the equivalent of the skin of an apple, surrounding the planet. And then that initial wave of beauty and awe is followed by the awareness that paper thin layer of atmosphere keeps every living thing on the planet alive. And so it's a little bit, I guess, terrifying in a way to think that, we have such a small blanket protecting us from the vacuum of space. But to me, the big thing about the overview effect, the big thing of this shift in awareness, the shift in consciousness, is that when you see the planet from space, you are immersed in awe and wonder and beauty. And so the point that I'm trying to make is that you don't have to go to space to have that same type of realization, that same type of experience. You just have to be open to the miraculous awe and wonder that surrounds us every moment of every day. We, from the moment we're born, we start to learn how to take all that for granted. And, the world requires that we kind of compartmentalize ourselves into the small little box in order to function in society. We can't be constantly, acting in accordance with the miraculous awe and wonder that surrounds us constantly. But one of the really unique things about seeing the planet from space is the vantage point itself. And I like to use terrestrial examples. If you're sitting on a beautiful beach looking at an exquisite sunset, if you're at the rim of the Grand Canyon looking out at this beautiful ancient gorge, you can be really, really moved by awe and wonder. You could really have a transcendental experience in that setting. But what's different in the setting of space is you are separated from that. You are outside the frame of the masterpiece. On the beach, at the rim of the Grand Canyon, gravity is pushing you down into that scene, right? Gravity is squeezing you within the frame of the masterpiece. But when you are in space, you are apparently separated and outside the frame of the masterpiece. In reality, you're not outside the frame. You're still inside the frame of the masterpiece. But from our, four-dimensional, three-dimensional plus time perspective, there is a void of nothingness separating us from the beauty that we're seeing. And I think that is a really significant part of it. And the fact that you're floating, the fact that literally the rug has been pulled out from under you, the foundation that you have set your feet upon your entire life, you no longer have to stand upon anymore, forces you into a situation where you have to reevaluate everything. And what I experienced, and again, this is an epiphany in slow motion, and it is still occurring. I am still processing my experience. But what I did experience and what I continue to experience is a profound sense of unity, a profound sense that we're all in this together, but it's more than that. I mean, it's that we are inextricably linked together in ways that we can't even begin to fathom. And there's the superficial aspect of that, of what happens to one part of the planet affects everything else. We all understand that. We all understand that we're all part of one, or most of us understand that we're all part of one human family. But this unity goes way deeper than that, and it is a really, really powerful thing. And so my first mission was 2 weeks long, and it was so busy. I was just hanging on. I mean, I had moments of awe and wonder, and moments, especially I did 3 spacewalks on that first mission, so I had moments during that where I could kind of take it in. But then I had a couple of years to process that experience before I flew to the space station the second time. And then I had almost 6 months while in space to process that experience. And now, I have some years after that. And so, I'll stop there. I could talk for the next few hours, but I think it's the big takeaway is that every one of us is surrounded by awe and wonder constantly, every moment of the day, and we can have this experience if we so choose. And that experience for me was a profound sense of unity and a profound sense of gratitude, of gratitude for the opportunity to see the planet from that vantage point, and for the planet and life that we've all been given.
Well, I think you've made good use of the intervening years, because it's clear you've put some effort into articulating that.
Mark, can I just add one thing? I read Ron's book last year, Floating in Darkness, and I thought it's a great, Ron didn't ask me to do this, but
10% of all net sales.
It was a great book, and I thought it was really interesting how Ron talks about everything that he did pre-space, which is vast and very impressive, and how that experience plays into how you process the overview effect in your time in space. And I'm listening to Ron talk, and even though everyone's going to have a personal and different experience in space and how the overview effect affects them, it seems like we all come to some very similar conclusions at the end of it, which I think is just the beautiful part of it.
I think because
Yeah,
we
I
see
love that.
truth. I mean, you reckon it's we're we have the ability to recognize truth when we see it, and when we look at the planet from space, we are faced with undeniable truth.
And I love the metaphor of the seed, and whether or not that's tended after your flight. And Frank has started to talk too about preparedness, and
Right. I was just going to say,
especially
you have to prepare the soil before the flight too.
yeah, love it. Well, let's pass it over to Sarah. Sarah, what was your experience? Again, a short time frame, but what was your experience looking down at the Earth from space?
Yeah, the overview effect is, as you know, we've read about it. Like, you know, we've before my trip to space, I have heard other astronauts talk about it. So but you don't know what it's going to be like for you. And I remember like having this interview with Frank right before my flight, and so I talked to him about what I thought it was going to be like. But then when I came back, it was something that was very different, and it was a lot more profound than I thought it was going to be. You know, because I thought, okay, we're going to see Earth from space. I'm sure that our brains are not biologically prepared to experience this. But as a scientist, I always kind of thought, so in what way is it going to really change things? And also I was trying to think about like how is it possible for it to really have that huge of an effect on someone's life? And coming back from that, it was a lot more than I thought it was going to be. And for me, it was it was not what I expected it to be at all. I was very emotional coming back, and I'm not a very expressive person. So the flight was very, very, very emotional for me. And like, if you guys have seen the video, I cried like a baby. And all of us cried, honestly. Like, it was a really, really, it was such because you're confused. So like Sirisha was saying, we don't experience the overview effect in the moment. So it's not something that you in the moment feel like, oh, this click that is changing. It is what comes after. But in the moment, it's just confusion, you know? So when you're seeing Earth from space, your brain is not really understanding what's going on too much. It's just, how is that what you're really seeing with your own eyes? So it's kind of like a lot of question marks in your brain. And how is that possible? How are you there? How is this what you're seeing? How is this so beautiful? How is this? Because when we're sitting in this room right now, everything that we're always on the inside, and that's what we're used to. But then when you change that, when you're on the outside, it kind of breaks your reality a bit. And for me, that's the best way that I've been able to describe it, is that it broke my reality. And then coming back from that, I've really had to piece it all back together and really live with this new reality, this new understanding of the world. And there's two things that really, really stayed with me. And it's how close space is. You know, we're always talking about space as something that's something else, you know? We're always using space and Earth as two separate things. We're always like giving one priority more than the other. We're always treating one as something they're not like the same, right? We're saying we're going to space. We're always saying like it's this external thing that is not like, we're not treating it as if it was ours. When in reality, you're just leaving Earth just a tiny little bit. Even going to Mars, you're just leaving Earth just a tiny little bit. Like when you look at the scale of the whole universe, Mars is also still very, 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 very close. So it's really when you leave Earth and when you're just even like just a tiny little bit, like you realize how small Earth is. And that changed the scale of everything for me. Everything seemed so much smaller. We're so much smaller, but in return, our impact is so much bigger. You know, what I thought was possible from an individual is actually not what we think it is. Every single one of us has a much, much bigger impact on Earth than we think we do. You know, so that changes everything. And that also gives you the sense of responsibility, is you have to do something about it. So when you see Earth from space and you see how this unity that Ron was talking about, like it does belong to all of us, you know, and we are responsible for it. No one else is gonna, you know, try to save it. It's us, you know, it's our generation, it's all of us. We need to be doing something about it. So you do feel this huge sense of responsibility towards it. And that was it for me. I just feel an incredible and immense sense of responsibility towards Earth. And then the other part was because of this lack of separation that I experienced between Earth and space. And when I was looking out that window and I was seeing the immensity of the universe and this blackness and this limitlessness, you know, it was just so ineffable. And it's so weird to say that. I know it's so weird for me to say that, you know, I felt such a strong connection to it. And even though space it's you're not meant to be there, right? It's trying to kill you. You're not supposed to be there. But for me, I felt like for the very first time, I felt like I was home. And that coming back, I felt someone was ripping me away from where I was supposed to be. And everything clicked. I understood, you know, I understand why we're doing what we're doing, why we need to be exploring space, but we need to also be doing the same for Earth. So you feel a sense of responsibility towards both sides because they are not separate. They're just one. So it's so much of looking at the universe and feeling this connectedness, and as humanity, that's what makes us human, wanting to have this understanding of what everything is. You know, we have so many questions, and that's, I think, what makes us human, our curiosity. And that's, I'm sure everyone here are like, you're here in this call because you're a dreamer, because you have these questions, because you are curious, right? And that's the quality that if you push for that, and if you want to understand these things, that's what pushes humanity forward. And that's what we need to do, you know? And as humans, we are meant to be exploring this. And for me, going to space, it all just clicked. And everything that's coming back from that, and for the weeks and for the months afterwards, I would just look at something and it would just make different sense. It's so weird to say again. I know that that's just the best way that I could describe it, that things made different sense than they did before I went to space. Like I would be looking out the window on a train and seeing just a bunch of houses and grass and trees. But then for some reason, I would imagine myself holding Earth. And then if you shake it, you know, if you just imagine shaking it and shaking it really, really hard, that the trees would stay, the oceans would stay, the plants would stay, just like everything that is Earth would stay. And it is just its own living being. It's breathing, it's living, and everything else is extra. So once you understand all of the materialistic things that we as humans have put on Earth are extra and are actually harming it, you know? So this is such a weird thing, but this is how I started looking at things after coming back. And it's so weird. I had to stop everything I was doing and just remove my headphones, just had to write it down in my notes, because I was like, what, how is this, how am I looking at Earth as if I'm holding it? And I think a reason is because I saw it from the outside, and now it seems more graspable or more manageable, you know? So you have to like Ron was saying, that it does plant a seed, and you do need to start cultivating it. You need to, the seed that it plants is the overview effect, and it's this responsibility that you get, but then you need to do something about it. And that's kind of what I've been doing and what I've dedicated my life to doing also.
Oh, I love it. And it looks like Ron unmuted. You might have something to add.
Oh yeah. I'd like to piggyback on a lot of what Sarah said, because it touches on so many things. The first thing I guess is that really hit me, Sarah, was when you said that space was always something that you travel to, and I realized that it's not, that it's connected, right? And so that's why when I was speaking, I corrected myself and I said, you're apparently outside the frame of the masterpiece, because you're actually not outside the masterpiece. We just, in our perception, because of what we have been trained through our life to date, walking around on this planet, that we are outside of it. The other thing that you said that I thought was really interesting was talking about the confusion aspect of it. And to me, I didn't experience it as confusion. I experienced it as a feeling of unrealness. I couldn't, when I went out for the first time on my first spacewalk, it was almost like I was watching it unfold, like I was watching a video, like it wasn't actually happening. It wasn't real. And I think that's because everything that we experience is experienced in the context of what we have experienced. And if you have no prior context to compare what you're presently experiencing with, your mind is going to question whether or not it's real. And that is also sensed as a feeling of confusion. And so this is such a monumental thing that you had, the first time you go to space, and you've obviously have no context to compare it to. I think that's I think that's an aspect. And I guess the last thing that you said that really struck me was this, you talking about the responsibility that comes from having the opportunity to have the overview effect. And I wrote about that in the preface to the overview effect. I guess, Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the 3rd edition or the 4th edition, where I compared the overview effect to the orbital perspective. And if the overview effect is this shift in perspective, this shift in awareness that you have, this feeling of unity, that the light bulb finally comes on and you realize the orbital perspective is what you do with that. The orbital perspective is the call to action that comes from the overview effect. It's a refusal to accept the status quo on our planet. It's a refusal to accept the difference between the beauty of our planet and the unfortunate realities of life on our planet, right? Because we all know that life is not always as beautiful on the surface as the planet appears from space. And so it's a feeling of injustice, it's a feeling of trying to make this place better and to make life on Earth as beautiful as it looks from space. And so that's that connection there. So you hit on a lot of really, really very important and poignant things.
So fantastic. One of the things that struck me listening to Sarah speak too was I'm no expert and I'm not the psychologist on the on the team here, but it sounded remarkably like people talking about the benefits of psychedelics, right? The reality breaking experience that changes your perspective and gives you a sense of unity with a wider universe we don't normally see. It sounds like there's a lot of psychological benefits to experiencing that.
Well, it's all about getting outside of our narrow preconceived notions, right? Meditation is the same way, right? When you meditate, you're trying to get outside of your thoughts. You're trying to rise above your thoughts and become a silent observer of your thoughts, right? And so I think in psychedelic experiences and space experiences and meditative experiences, if you can just put a teeny little bit of distance between you and that object, that even though that distance doesn't exist, but in your mind, if you can separate yourself out from that, it changes everything. And you don't have to go to space to do that, obviously.
So we're going to turn a corner to our second question. And this is, of course, why we're here. And it's very much informed by the experiences that you all have had in space. And that's why we start there. But how might we best prepare today's students both for this growing space economy? Two of you went up on commercial space flights, right? And for humanity's rapidly approaching multi-planet future. Just for context, I think everybody here probably understands, but for anybody who might be watching the video later, if you take today's second graders, 10 years from now, they're going to graduate into a world where hopefully we've got a permanent presence on the moon and people have landed on Mars and we have multiple commercial space stations. We're knocking right on the door of humanity being at least a little bit multi-planetary. So how do we prepare students for all of what's coming ahead in the next 10 years with space? And Sirisha, maybe we can throw it over to you to start again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think let me just go back to the conference I was at Space Symposium. I think the beauty of where the space industry right now is very diverse in what it's trying to do. It's not just transportation to space anymore. It's thinking about a commercial LEO destination, going to different planets. It's thinking about problems such as orbital debris management and mitigation. I think that, looking at what it means to be in space is quite complex. And it was showcased by just the vast amount of people and different ideas that they're bringing to the table in these last 4 days at the conference. But in terms of preparation, so let me take it in two buckets just to pull on that thread. One, I think the beauty of it is that there are so many different ways to be a part of space, especially on the commercial side with commercial companies. The engineering, the space tech is very important, but for it to be a sustainable business, it needs to have all aspects of a business: legal, marketing, the ability for people, and I think this part is really important, the ability, and Ron and Sarah definitely showcase this, the ability for people to take what seems like very complex ideas and be able to communicate it and show how it affects people that may not believe that it affects their lives every day. And I think that part is very important. So I think that's what really excites me, is that to be in space means many different things. You can be an artist and utilize space as part of your portfolio now. And I think that's it's game changing. And then the second is the idea that, and Sarah touched on it, is that us going to different destinations, becoming multiplanetary species, is not that we are leaving Earth behind. Space is just an extension of humanity and our presence here on Earth. And I think that is an idea that, and a thought that should be thread into every preparation we make to the next generation and in the next steps in space travel. We cannot leave the planet just to leave our problems behind. We will be taking all of humanity's problems to wherever we go. And we need to really frame it in that sense, so that we're looking at it as we are trying to lift everybody up and not just leave people behind.
Yeah, I like to think we will choose to export the best of humanity rather than our conflicts and shortcomings as we shepherd life throughout the solar system, right? We want to expand the whole terrestrial biosphere.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to export the best of humanity, but I think no matter what we export, we bring the weakest part with us. And we have to, I mean, it's really hard to think that we can never leave some of those aspects behind.
Very wise, I think. Ron, if we could go to you next, what do you think? In what ways might we prepare students?
Yeah, I want to piggyback on what Sirisha said, because she nailed it. You know, if we eventually have a starship that travels, 73, light years away from Earth, the radius of Earth just became 73 light years, right? Because however far we extend ourselves, that's our home, right? And just like Sirisha said, if whatever issues we have, whether it's governance and environmental, whatever issues and problems we have on the surface of the Earth, when we become multiplanetary, we're just going to bring those problems with us. All right. And the reason why we're both saying it, I think, is because we hear people with this idea that we're going to go terraform Mars and we're going to create a utopian society somewhere else in the solar system, somewhere else in the universe. And that's just not going to happen. We have to solve the problems here. First of all, from a technical point of view, if we can't control the temperature of our own planet by a couple of degrees, we're not going to terraform anything. So we definitely have to do that. So I think when we're speaking to the next generation, we need to make sure that, like Sirisha said, they understand that we're not trying to abandon ship, right? And so when we become multiplanetary, even now as space explorers, when we explore space, when we settle on to different heavenly bodies, we need to do that as ambassadors of a thriving planet, not as passengers escaping a sinking ship, right? And so that mindset is really, really important. And I think that we need to continue to stress the positive benefits of what the space program brings us as far as technology, not only technology, because I think although I think that's important, but more important than the technological benefits, I think it's the international cooperation, it's the camaraderie, it's this understanding that we can go farther together. I mean, just look at the space station right now. There's a war raging in Ukraine, and there's still cooperation on the space station somehow. And so in this particular case, this rises above this, right? And there's a lot of people who think that's a bad thing, right? They think we have no business doing anything with folks that we disagree with, that we have challenges with. And what the space station is right now, what the space program is a platform that we can jump off from if we so choose to try and address the things that we don't agree on, right? Because we started the space program together in cooperation with a bunch of different nations, because we found things that we agreed on. We decided to work on those things, and through that, a platform of cooperation has developed that we can use for other things. And so I think that's another aspect of space exploration that we need to teach the new generation.
Oh, I love it. Such a great perspective. Let's kick it over to Sarah for an additional answer to this. How can we best prepare students for everything that's ahead?
Yeah, like Ron was saying, and I think I'm also going to piggyback on that, but I think international.
Great to have everybody with us, but please be sure to mute. Fantastic. Go ahead, Sarah. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, about international collaboration, I think that's really something that is, and has a lot of sub, categories into that, right? I think it's really the biggest and the most important thing that we need to solidify, because it is part of the UN space treaties. It is part of what, when we're talking about international law, I am very heavily involved now in law. That's why it's kind of really something that is so important right now to me, is that we are meant to be we are supposed to be exploring space for the benefit of all, right? Because it's not that space, it's not like other celestial bodies don't belong to anyone. If they were not belonging to anyone, then someone can go and claim it, right? But it's actually legally, it belongs to everyone. So it needs to benefit everyone. So international collaboration is at the root of all of this. So if we have disputes, if we think that there is competition, if we think that there are threats, and if we kind of start acting as though, oh yeah, maybe this country is going to be a threat, or maybe this one, or maybe this one, you're going to be having this, you're going to be bringing the same mentality that we have on Earth back in space. So we need to stop looking at it as though we're different countries, we need to be competing, we need to be doing this first or doing that first. No, we need to have all skin in the game. We need to all be looking at this as it belongs to all of us. And there shouldn't, be we shouldn't use space as if it was a power thing, but sadly, that's how it's been for forever. But I think more and more now we are starting to realize how it shouldn't be that way too much. It should be belonging to everyone. We should be doing it together. And I think a thing to start with students is really teaching them acceptance of just everything, not everything as in accepting the situation that you're in front of. No, you have to refuse something if it's challenging, if it's challenging, if the situation is not good, you should refuse it and you should do something about it, but accepting other people. So I think in schools, what I see in Egypt and Africa and the US, and in so many different parts of the world, in Europe, there's this, we don't really put a lot of importance on that, on accepting people who don't look like you, on accepting that people who come from different countries, from different cultures, who speak different languages, who all of this, if you're not giving that enough importance, you're going to keep growing up with the mentality that they're different. We're always going to keep looking at this as we're two different tribes, Historically, we have been doing that forever, and it kind of brings us together. It has brought countries closer together to work harder together if we have someone to look to be on the outside. Right. But when we're talking about space, we should not be doing that, in my opinion, at least. We should really be accepting of everything and really looking at Earth as if we're all part of it together, this unity, that we're all human beings and we're all the same in the end. We shouldn't have this. So we need to be, I think, for me, one of the most important things to really start putting importance in for students is that, to really put a lot of effort and priority towards just removing some unconscious bias that we have grown up with, towards nationalities, towards cultures, towards religion, towards gender, so they all exist now, and it's crazy. And I keep sometimes I just sit down and wonder, how are we in 2023 and we're still facing that, because I have faced that in my journey, of course. But it's made me who I am, and I would not change anything, but I think if we are wanting to look at space and treat it differently, if we want to not take the problems that we have on Earth, right now, they all come from this separation, from the competition, from thinking that we're not the same, from one. So I think if we remove that, if we use how we've seen it was possible with the ISS, right? Like Ron was saying, and if we continue doing that, but we actually put importance in it from the younger age, it breaks like what we're used to. It kind of stops us from, it could be like one of the ways that we can just let go of the problems. And when we go to space, we don't take the same things, the same issues, because I think it all starts from there. Because I always try to think about like, what is the root cause of this? Like, why is this problem happening? Because if we just treat the problem, we're not really treating anything, because it's just going to happen again and again and again. So why is that happening? And we need to treat that, like maybe starting them younger and having this implemented in the educational system. You know, I think it's really important to add it to the education system, because, well, as students, we spend most of our time in school, right? So if this is a priority, if this is something that we're taught, because I think like COVID has taught us like being in isolation, and actually going to space does the same. Like, but I think every one of us has gone through something in their lives that has made them a little bit more self-aware. But if it has not happened yet, it will eventually happen, I hope, because this is something that is so important. But what if we start that a little bit like at a younger age in school, you know, teaching people to become more self-aware, to question why you are thinking about this person this way. Does that make sense? Is that rational? You know, so I think that is, for me, the most important thing in order for us to avoid all of the bad things that could happen in space, like taking all of the bad things from Earth.
I think I may see a segue here to some of the questions that the participants are asking, because I think you have all sort of pushed back on the idea that we're only going to export our good things because you know, we're going to remain human, and whatever failures we have here, we're going to pass those on, right? But you've also all spoken of kind of a more unifying perspective, and nurturing that and sharing that, and you all do that, I think. Some of the questions we're getting, though, are really looking at divisions today, and maybe I can put two of them together into a question you guys could address. One question was, what's the path into space for young women today? How can we best prepare young women for being a part of all of this? Traditionally, obviously, they're underrepresented in the space industry, and certainly among space travelers. And a similar question is, how could we raise awareness and create opportunity for people in other countries that are not already a part of this? Obviously, Sarah, your path is quite unique, but there's a lot of places in the world where that's still not really possible. So if we could throw it out to the panel, feel free to answer in whatever order, but how can we raise awareness and create paths of opportunity for I guess traditionally underrepresented demographics, whoever and wherever they might be?
I can start. I think kind of to say almost what Sarah said one more time, but I think at the base of it is continue to do cool things, because space inspires. And the important part is to share and communicate those stories, especially because the faces of the people who have been to space are changing. You're seeing that. We still have less than 100 women that have gone to space, but that, I think, with commercial platforms, that's going to change. But the important part is to share their stories and share their experiences. You know, I was inspired by Dr. Kalpana Chawla, who was someone that I saw looked like me, and I never met her, but shared an identity with her. And just from that, you know, it seems like a very minimal basic thing helped reduce mental barriers in my mind, that the industry there was a place in industry for me, and I would be successful in industry. So I think especially for those that are underrepresented in our industry, it's very important to share those stories of those that have been to space and have done these amazing things. And Sarah, you're already doing a great job at that as well. And then for I think commercial, and I'm sorry to talk about it so much, but I think commercial platforms are doing a great deal and provide a great opportunity for countries that do not historically have a great presence in space. From the very, and it's not even trivial, but just the very small step of getting the country's first astronaut. I mean, you know, that person's going to go to space, have this incredible experience and experience the overview effect, and go back into their community and become the first astronaut that the next generation in that country meets, has just a profound effect that's, I think, hard to quantify, but I think is going to be just game changing. But also because we have the ability to almost create different types of space programs with suborbital and also through commercial LEO destinations, I think it's not out of the realm of possible for countries to start building their space programs now at a cost that wasn't realized before. So I think space, as Sarah said, is becoming closer to Earth than we think.
Yeah, you said it very, very well. And I think you are inspiring generations too. Sirisha, like it's really, I think it is, space does inspire. I do agree with that, because it does help you to think about what is not possible. Also, it helps you to dream bigger. And I think I'm a little bit biased here, but I think no field does that at this scale than the space field, because it creates this ineffability feeling, this wonder, this thirst to explore and like want to understand more. And yes, and I think representation really does help with that. Because growing up, for me, I never saw anyone that looked like me in the field. We were always told that it's not for us. I was always told that I should, like, for me, dreaming about, but I was almost not allowed to dream about going to space, you know, just because it wasn't for us. You know, you're always told that it's for that side of the world, like, just be real, don't think like that, you know. And I was always told even engineering would be too difficult for me. Like, why are you rebellious? You know, I was always thought to be the rebellious person. Like, why are you just not doing the normal thing? Why doing even biomedical engineering, I was always told that I would never have any opportunities in my country, that I would just end up staying at home, marrying just a man and just like rely on him, you know. So it didn't really matter what I was doing. My dreams didn't matter. My successes wouldn't matter, just because of what it's like in the country. And I think that also stems from the lack of representation, lack of understanding of what is possible by a person from a certain country, let alone a woman. So for us, it's a little bit even, you know, they would, in our culture especially, like, we're always taught to be a little bit less rebellious. So being rebellious is not usually a good thing, but I've always been that way. And I think that has helped me in my journey, because it taught me not to listen to whatever everyone else was telling me around me, for all the lack of support that I have received throughout my entire journey, for everything that people said that I was crazy to even think about, for taking such huge risks on my life, for really sacrificing so much, or like doing this, or that I wouldn't be good enough, or that I didn't belong, you know, all of that. I was able to thankfully shut that out and just do what I thought needed to be done. And for me, I just thought it was necessary. And for me, I'd always look at things as if they were a problem that needed solving. So I feel very grateful and lucky to have been able to do that, but it's not easy, you know. And I think having representation, having people who look like you know, who grew up from the same places you grew up in, I think that changes things a little bit. And I think I'm very, very grateful and very, you know, thankful to see that it's not about like it being me, the person, you know, just the fact that Egypt and Africa and the Arab world now has a little bit more representation, because that gives a little bit of hope, you know, a little bit of this feeling that, hey, wait, maybe it is possible. Like Sirisha was saying, when she was inspired by the first Indian born woman to go to space, you know. So it was, that changes your whole path, you know. It could change everything. And I have, you know, one of my colleagues, like I'm in the lab that I work at, I'm at the university here. I'm doing my PhD, that's why. But she shared the exact same story, that because she saw her in the news one day, she decided to take this path too, you know. So that changed her whole career path, her whole life, you know. And imagine how many lives she is changing because of that one newspaper she saw at 6 years old. So it's really something that I think is so important. And it matters so much. It matters really so much. And like the commercial side is helping with that a little bit, because for me, odds were, of course, very much not in my favor to go to space, but I was getting ready to do that anyway, just because of how I thought, like, I'm always going to find a way. And I knew it was going to happen. And I knew like I was somehow going to find a way. But it was kind of like being stubborn and just believing that it would happen. And I think visualizing it and really seeing it happen helped me so much, because I would literally go to bed every single night seeing myself in the capsule chair before going to bed. You know, it was something that I think when you see yourself doing it, because I couldn't see anyone else, you know, coming from my side of the world do it. So for me, I just had to see myself do it. And that helped me so much. I just visualized myself. I could feel the vibrations. I could feel it all happen, so that I could see it happen. So it was a little bit more real, you know, because I kind of like got ready a little bit, saw myself do it. So then it became a little bit more real. So I think we need to do that. So I think sharing our stories is really important, but also doing things that on the ground give those opportunities too. You know, for me, I think, yes, I do my best to, as much as I can, share my story and really tell people that it is possible to really trust in your instinct and all that, because it's so important. But I think also allowing people the opportunity to do this too. For me, I didn't have opportunities, you know, because of the laws that exist, because of where I was from, everything. So everything was against me, and I was just not allowed to work in the space field. So I created opportunities, but not only for myself, but for other people. Because if you focus on creating opportunities just for yourself, maybe you'll change your mind at some point. Maybe it's not that big of a motive if you just do it for yourself. But if you do it in mind that you're actually doing it for so many people, that's going to push you to continue, even if it's so difficult, even if it's really challenging, you know? So that's why I created my company, Deep Space Initiative. And that what we're doing is we're providing opportunities on the ground for everyone around the world. We have research opportunities, we have educational courses, we're also dealing with the legal side too, is to also have an understanding of why the laws that exist should maybe start being changed a little bit, you know, because maybe they made sense before, but they don't anymore. And I think we're not a lobbying entity, just to also clear that out, but we are like aiming to educate about that, about why those laws don't make sense anymore and why they're harming everyone around the world. They're harming all parties. So I think that's such an important thing. And at Deep Space Initiative, last year, we provided opportunities for around 30 people. This year, we have 85 researchers from all over the world. So we have no restrictions to your location or resources or anything at all. So you are able to do the research that I dreamt about doing. You know, when I started my journey, I just could not be part of those research projects. But now we have that. Now you can do the research yourself. And we are continuing to do that. And what we're dreaming about is that people who, you know, graduate from these programs that we have, they do that for others too. They remain in their countries, bring those opportunities, this experience that they've acquired, bring that to their universities, their school. So it's just about like creating this generation of like more opportunities, but not only created by one entity, but also by the people who graduate from that and creating those opportunities again and again. And I think my biggest advice would be like, if you don't see the opportunity, if you can't do it, like if you see an opportunity, but you can't apply to it, and if all doors are closed, just create one. Don't wait and don't wait to like knock on those doors, because they might not open for you, you know, and it might just be completely out of your hand, but just create opportunities. And
I love
it's
it.
always possible.
I love your focus too on creating opportunities for others. And as I was listening to you speak about, you know, having to see yourself in the chair, I was realizing how important it is to have those sort of analog experiences here, the space camp experiences, and how we can create more things like that in schools. And it's great that all of you are out there creating experiences for everyone. Well, we're gonna have to switch gears here. We only have like a 15-minute passing period. I do see Ron unmuted, so I want to give him a chance to at least very briefly address this last question. Then I've got a few logistics to share with you guys, and we will send you on your way to the first session. But Ron, fire away if you've got something to add.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think Sarah and Sirisha did an outstanding job on that topic. You know, for decades, the only people that anyone saw fly to space were white male military test pilots, right? And so I agree, it's really, really important for those people who don't fit into that category to be out there, visible, so that people realize, so kids in particular realize that that's a path that they can go down. And so that's really important. And I have to apologize because I do have a commitment on the hour, so I'm going to have to drop off. But I do want to just say one last thing about what something else that Sarah said when we were talking about when she was talking about we need to see ourselves in a bigger picture, right? And that, it's not necessarily one nation doing this, and it's not competition on nations. And I think one of the reasons why people are reluctant to see that bigger picture is because they are afraid they have to give something up, right? And so when we look at things from the bigger picture, it doesn't mean we have to forget where we came from, our national, our cultural, our religious, our organizational affiliations. It simply means seeing those things in a context of the big picture, right? And so I think that's really important that that distinction is made, that you don't have to give up that thing. You're not any less American or Egyptian or Russian or whatever when you take this bigger picture. As a matter of fact, because we have different perspectives, that gives us strength, right? We hear diversity is strength. Diversity is strength primarily because we have diversity of perspectives and see things from more than one perspective. When you see things from two perspectives, you see it in stereoscopic vision. So you start to see the depth, you start to see, the underlying issues better, right? And so the more perspectives we can apply to a problem, the better off we are. And so if we become a family of nations, a true human family, that tapestry of beauty that comes from all of our different cultures, all of our different nationalities and traditions becomes a source of incredible strength. It's not something that we have to give up. And that's, I think, one of the things that prevents us from taking that next leap, next quantum leap in evolution, is this fear-based mentality that we're giving something, that we have to give something up.
Well, I want to thank you, all three of you, for being here today and sharing with the students and educators and enthusiasts who are here from all over the world. If you didn't hear at the beginning, we have representatives from 60 countries registered. So I think this last topic is probably particularly meaningful to the folks who are here. So thank you all for being generous with your time and generous with sharing your experience. And of course, for the ways that you all are creating opportunities for others to be a part of this, to experience the change in perspective you have, and to move forward as a united humanity. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again, but in the meantime, if you guys can give a round of applause to our panelists. This could be using exactly clapping on camera, using the applause feature here in Zoom. We're really lucky and grateful to have had you guys here. So a couple of logistics to get us on